All right, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the Enhanced Replant Program Stream 2 Wine Grape Replant webinar. Before I officially start presenting, I want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the program webpage in the coming days. Secondly, the presentation will be followed by a Q&A session. Please use the Q&A function through Zoom to submit your questions. This can be done throughout the presentation, but all questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. If we are unable to answer or reach your question within the allotted time, we will do our best to follow up by email if one is provided, and we'll update the FAQs on the program's website if applicable. Please do not provide any identifiable information when submitting questions. If you have a specific question that you'd like to discuss with the IAF team, please reach out to erp@iafbc.ca or find a link on the ERP Stream 2 webpage to book a consultation call once you've drafted an application. So welcome to IAF's webinar on the Enhanced Replant Program, Stream 2, Wine Grape Replant. My name is Aaron, and I'm a project coordinator with IAF. Before we begin the presentation, I'd like to acknowledge that IAF's office is in Victoria, the traditional territory of the Lekwungen First Nations, represented today by the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations, and that IAF operates across traditional and unceded Indigenous territories throughout BC. ERP is funded by the Government of British Columbia through the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and is delivered by IAF. I am joined today by Phil Duke and Lindsay Hainstock, representing the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, who will be assisting me during the Q&A period of the webinar today. Phil and Lindsay, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. I'm Philip Duke, and I work for the Ministry of Agriculture based out of Kelowna, and am the manager on the government side for the Enhanced Replant Program. Lindsay?
Hey, I'm Lindsay Hainstock. I'm coming in from the South Okanagan, also Seelix Territory or unceded Seelix Territory. And I have two roles with the ministry. So one, I'm here as the grape specialist for the province, as well as I work as a regional agrologist for the South Okanagan Similkameen boundary.
Thanks. So a brief agenda for today's presentation. We will cover an overview of the program, a more detailed overview of Stream 2 and how to apply to Stream 2, and the presentation will be followed by a Q&A session. The Enhanced Replant Program provides support to help wine grape, berry, and tree fruit producers replace existing acreage with climate-resilient varieties that produce in-demand premium fruit. The program objective is to increase the competitiveness and resiliency of the BC agri-food economy in domestic and global markets by providing direct funding support to producers looking to replace damaged, diseased, and low-producing vines, plants, and trees with climate-resilient varieties that produce in-demand premium fruit. Funding for ERP is available through 4 funding streams. Today's webinar will focus on Stream 2, Wine Grape Replant. For further information about the other funding streams, please visit IAF's website. So let's get into the details of Stream 2. Stream 2 is open to existing wine grape producers who are replacing existing acreage with new vineyards. It's important to note that replant activities cannot start until after a producer has received funding approval. Under this program, the funding limits are the same for all 4 streams, so if you're applying for Stream 2, the following applies. Each farm operation can apply for a minimum of 1 contiguous acre to a maximum of 20 acres or 15% of total existing acreage, whichever is greater. A contiguous acre means sharing a common border, so all acres are connected by at least 1 common border. For example, 2 half-acre planting sites on a single parcel separated only by a driveway, fence, or other boundary line would be considered a single contiguous acre here. The total funding available for each farm operation over the duration of the program is capped at a maximum of $750,000. This funding limit has increased from last year when it was previously capped at $500,000. The cost share ratio depends on whether the applicant has been paid a production insurance plant loss claim or has a plant loss claim in progress for each field being replanted. All applicants are required to indicate if they have been paid a production insurance plant loss claim from January 1st, 2023 onward, or have a plant loss claim in progress for the field or block being replanted. Cost share ratios for applicants will be adjusted based on business risk management program claims at each planting location. So let's take a look at what this means in the next two slides. If you're applying and haven't been paid a production insurance plant loss claim, or don't have an active production insurance plant loss claim, the following applies. You would receive 50% cost shared reimbursement for nursery plants and one-time plant royalty and/or licensing fees when purchased from a commercial nursery. This means the program will reimburse 50% of the plant costs and one-time royalty or licensing fees at the completion of the project, and the applicant would cover the remaining 50%. Commercial nurseries under this program are defined as professional businesses that sell finished plants to producers. If you're applying and have been paid a production insurance plant loss claim, or have an active production insurance plant loss claim, the following applies. You would receive 25% cost shared reimbursement for nursery plants and one-time plant royalty and/or licensing fees when purchased from a commercial nursery. The modified funding ratio for production insurance claimants is intended to ensure that the program equitably supports producers with or without plant loss claims, rather than only those without claims. For plant loss claimants, the program can act as a top-up beyond the more substantial support received through production insurance. For this program, all applicants must meet the program-wide eligibility criteria and stream-specific eligibility criteria. Let's start by taking a look at the program-wide eligibility criteria. To be considered eligible for this program, you must be the owner or lessee of the land, indicate if you have been paid a production insurance plant loss claim from January 1st, 2023 onwards, or have a plant loss claim in progress. Demonstrate financial viability to complete and maintain a project. Be in good standing with councils identified by the corresponding industry association, and maintain the property as a commercial operation for at least 4 years after replanting. Ineligible applicants for the Enhanced Replant Program include annual crop producers, forage producers, non-commercial producers, and farmland outside of BC. Sectors that do not have an opportunity assessment completed and pre-approved by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. Producers that do not meet the funding stream-specific criteria. Applicants with an active perennial crop renewal program project. Once a PCRP project is fully complete, you are eligible to apply for ERP. So what activities are eligible under ERP? The first is plant costs. This is eligible providing the planting takes place after the application is approved and plants have not been funded through other programs. As mentioned a few slides ago, when we were talking about cost share ratios, funding will vary depending on if you have a production insurance plant loss claim. Another eligible activity is planting multiple varieties of the same commodity on a minimum of 1 contiguous acre. Project requirements. The replant site must be in British Columbia. Each field being replanted must cover a minimum of 1 contiguous acre. The field must be a single uninterrupted block. Based on current projections, the replant site must be commercially viable, i.e. will generate a positive return at full production. IF provides a form with the application to enter the estimated per acre costs and revenues at full production. For each replanted site, applicants must be a licensed water user, be within an irrigation district, or have submitted a water use license application prior to applying. Irrigation systems must be installed at or before planting. Vancouver Island wine grape growers are exempt from being required to have an irrigation system installed at planting. Ineligible activities under ERP include new plantings, including farm expansions and the establishment of crops on bare land or land previously utilized for non-perennial crops or non-food perennial crops. Home nurseries. The cost of plants, including maintenance fees from home nurseries, are ineligible. Goods and services tax, in-kind expenses, taxes and duty or shipping costs, other planting or removal costs, including but not limited to the rental of equipment, purchase of post and wire, labor, etc. Interplanting in existing vineyards, planting young plants between existing plants in the row. Ongoing annual royalty payments, whether per acre, per linear foot, or per fruit sold. And ineligible commodity-specific criteria as outlined in the sector-specific planting and removal guidelines. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please submit them into the Q&A box, and we will answer as many as possible following the presentation. So now that we've looked at the program-wide eligibility criteria, let's take a look at the Stream 2 eligibility criteria. Eligible applicants must be in good standing with the BC Wine Grape Council, and all levies owed on fruit grown in the previous year must have been paid. There is an exemption for wine grape growers located on Vancouver Island. Irrigation systems must be installed in all fields at the time of planting. So again, there's an exemption for wine grape growers located on Vancouver Island. You must justify the marketing strategy by selecting the wine style from the replanting guidelines and recommendations report that the new vineyard will achieve. A link to this report is available on the Stream 2 webpage in the resources section. If replanting the same variety as what's being removed, you must justify how management practices are being adopted to ensure success. You must have a soil nutrient test from the field site within the last 3 years, and must demonstrate positive return at full production using the contribution margin template. Variety eligibility. Vines must be purchased from a nursery identified by the Canadian Grapevine Certification Network, or CGCN-RCCV, as certified for Canadian plant material and to a CFIA-approved international standard. Domestic vines must be Certified Plus, certified or verified by CGCN, and produced by a CGCN-registered nursery. USA imported vines must be certified by a state virus or pathogen-free certification program recognized by CGCN in California, Oregon, Washington, or New York, and free of any viruses or pathogens on the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's quarantine list. International imported vines. No other international certification programs are currently recognized by CGCN. Other programs seeking inclusion may submit requests directly to CGCN for review. Please note, although cold-tolerant vine plantings are encouraged when applicable, they are not the only eligible vine type for ERP Stream 3. The program's goal is to improve the production, marketing, or climate resiliency of your planting. A significant cold or freeze event is not a requirement to access funding from the program. Plantings that will perform in better variable temperatures or in extreme heat events such as gamay, or vines that will have higher general productivity or better alignment with market needs are also eligible. Both your market strategy and wine style need to be confirmed at the time of application, so you can let our team know what you're intending to replant and why. The Opportunity Assessment Gap Report was developed as a way to help simplify the process by providing options based on market research, which can be used as a reference to help inform your own marketing plan. A link to this report is provided on the Ministry of Agriculture and Food's Enhanced Replant Program website, which is linked on IAF's ERP website. Planting the varieties of Grenache or Mourvedre is ineligible. Planting Gewürztraminer is not widely recommended and must not represent more than 20% of an applicant's total acreage, and the applicant must provide a justification in the marketing and sales section of the business plan before being approved for replant funding of this variety. Planting Syrah is only eligible for funding on sites where regular extreme heat events are more of an issue than regular extreme cold events. Planting density guidelines. Plantings should be within the standard planting density of 1,300 to 2,200 plants per acre. If planting is outside of a 1,300 to 2,200 plants per acre range, verification from an accredited professional may be required from the applicant to verify the planting density and horticultural practices proposed by the producer. That wraps up the stream-specific eligibility criteria. Now that you have an idea of what you can apply for, let's talk about how to apply. Applicants can apply to ERP through the IAF client portal. Links to the portal are provided through IAF's website and listed on the slide here. To find the application, log into your account and select the Funding Opportunities tab from the gray sidebar, noted in yellow here. Once on this page, scroll down to find the application button for the Enhanced Replant program. Once you have drafted and saved an application, it will appear under the Applications Draft Applications section of the portal, noted in blue here. Applications for Stream 2 are currently open for drafting. Applicants have the chance to draft their application prior to submissions opening. Make sure you save your application when working on it in the IAF client portal, so it's ready for when application submissions open. Application submissions open on Tuesday, December 2nd at 9 a.m. and close on Monday, December 15th at 4 p.m. Projects will commence upon approval following a signed contribution agreement. All projects must be completed within 24 months of the project start date. Applications for ERP Stream 2 will be scored using the following criteria: having a confirmed plant order for all fields at the time of application, enrollment in production insurance, enrollment in agri-stability or vertical integration that makes them ineligible for agri-stability, having a current environmental farm plan or being in the process of renewing or applying for one, having a finance and marketing plan that meets ministry requirements and was developed within the last 5 years, confirming that the fields being replanted will be cover cropped or left fallow for at least 12 months prior to planting, or being a sustainable wine growing BC member or have completed the SWBC online self-assessment. In the last few slides of this presentation, I want to briefly talk about the application review process and what the next step is if your project is approved. So what does the project lifecycle look for this program? Upon successful completion of review by IAF staff, 10% of eligible applicants will be selected for further audit and review. This audit will involve a secondary review of applications for eligibility and validation of technical information by an accredited professional. Additional information may be requested from the applicant before it can be considered for funding. For approved projects, a final report will be due 2 weeks following the end date of the project. Project reports will be completed on the IAF client portal. Field inspections will be conducted for a minimum of 25% of completed projects by a qualified professional, scheduling an on-site visit with the producer. Upon approval, all applicants will sign a contribution agreement that outlines the funding amounts and funding conditions. Project changes are only granted in extenuating circumstances and may include budget changes such as over or underspend, activity changes within the 24-month restriction, project lead or designated officer changes, or reporting deadline extensions. Thank you, everyone. That wraps up the presentation portion of this webinar. We will move on to the Q&A section. As a reminder, please use the Q&A section or the Q&A function through Zoom to submit your questions. Please do not provide any identifiable information when submitting questions. My teammates will be sending me the questions to read aloud and answer. If we're unable to answer or reach your question within the allotted time, we will do our best to follow up by email and will update the Q&A on the program's website when applicable. If you have a specific question you'd like to discuss with the IAF team, please reach out to erp@iafbc.ca or find a link on the ERP webpage to book a consultation call once you have drafted an application. So I'll just wait to receive those Q&A questions from my colleagues here. Can you clarify the category cap change? So the category cap has increased from 500,000 to 750,000 per farming operation for the lifetime of the program. So if your project from last year is complete and reached the full 500,000, you would still be eligible to apply for up to 250,000 this year or in future intakes. Can I buy my plants from a home nursery? No, home nurseries are not eligible for Stream 2 wine grape replant in this intake. Plant materials should be sourced from a commercial nursery. The previous intake required a business plan. Do we not need one for this intake? For the 26-27 intake, the business plan has been renamed the Finance and Marketing Plan for the sake of the ERP program to better reflect the intended information captured by the plan. While there's no template for the plan, we recommend working through the checklist available within the application form to ensure you have all the required information. Just waiting for the next question. Can multiple small planting sites be used to meet the 1 acre minimum? So multiple small plantings of the same commodity type that add up to 1 acre on the same parcel while directly bordering each other. Sorry. Um, while directly bordering each other are eligible. If multiple small planting sites are nearby each other on the same parcel but do not directly border each other, we will be happy to review the site map to determine eligibility. Small plantings on different land parcels cannot be counted together towards the 1 acre minimum. Each parcel must include a minimum of 1 acre of the same commodity for replant to be eligible. So the next question is, how do I demonstrate financial viability to complete and maintain the project? So the program provides the contribution margin template within the application, and completing this form and uploading to your application can demonstrate the financial viability of your project. The link in the application will download an Excel document which has some pre-calculated fields based on the information you will input. There is also a second tab in this document which is optional, however, it may further assist you in confirming when your project will have a positive return. So the change to cost share ratio from 50% to 25%, it's been raised that this could be perceived as a punishment for having production insurance. And is this the case? So no, the cost share ratio is not a punishment. The modified funding ratio for production insurance claimants is intended to ensure that the program equitably supports producers with or without plant loss claims, rather than only those without claims. For plant loss claimants, the program can act as a top-up beyond the more substantial support received through production insurance.
Do you want me to elaborate
Sure,
just a
yeah.
little bit on that one? It has to do with how government programs, we have to be careful that we're not duplicating payments for the same thing or project on a lot of stuff. And so where we found room for this to be able to ensure that we could also provide to people who have indemnity payments through the production insurance part of it, knowing that it's never 100% coverage is with that indemnity payment. And so allowing for that 25%, at least through this program, helps top that up to ensure a more fulsome payment to the replant and help support that effort.
Thanks, Lindsay. Another question has arrived here. Is funding available for the cost of nursery stock if already planted? That is, backdated claims for the purchase cost of the plants, not including planting costs. So while plant costs are eligible for purchases made on or after January 1st, 2022, the act of replanting can only occur after your application has been approved. In this case, if your plants are already in the ground, they would not be eligible for funding through the ERP program. The next question is, please expand on the Syrah requirement regarding heat and cold events. We are in the South Okanagan, which recently experienced 2 cold winters in a row. However, this is not the norm for the area. How would this fit the heat cold event eligibility?
I can
Lindsay or
jump in
Phil,
on
would you
that
like to?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to explain that one. And so basically, it was when we had industry consultation as to what sort of variety should or shouldn't be considered for funding under this program. Of course, the freeze event was top of mind, I think, with most people. And so the overwhelming feedback we got was some of these more sensitive varieties like Syrah should not be funded. However, further consultation with a lot of the researchers and some of the ongoing studies shows that Syrah, though, is actually one of those better varieties that can handle things like the heat events and the hot temperatures that exactly the South Okanagan is known for. And so we certainly didn't want to restrict this program to just around that freeze event. And so it was trying to recognize that there's definitely some areas in the Okanagan that Syrah should not probably be planted. However, there's also some areas that would be very good locations for Syrah. So trying to distinguish that, but then also administering the program, trying to put it into a yes/no question for an application. So wording sounds a little awkward, but I hope that explains that there's definitely some areas where we see a benefit to planting Syrah.
Thanks. The next question is, does it have to be 1,300 plants per acre or can it be less? So the standard planting density recommended by the program is 1,300 to 2,200 plants per acre. But if your density falls outside of this, you'll be given the opportunity to provide justification, and that justification you provide will be verified by a qualified professional.
So I could feel a bit more of that. Just the rationale behind some of that was because part of this program is supposed to be trying to encourage an increase in production in blocks. And so that's why sometimes that lesser planting density can maybe be seen counterintuitive to that. However, we know there's exceptions. So it's just trying, when it falls outside those norms, it's just trying to get more of an explanation so we can understand better what your approach is to ensuring that good productivity.
Thanks. Just waiting for the next question here. So the next question is, do plants need to be on a confirmed plant order to be eligible for ERP? So at the time that you submit your application, you don't need to have a confirmed plant order yet, but you do need to specify the nursery that you'll be ordering from and the quantity and varietal. And if you do not have a confirmed order when you apply, you would be eligible for, at most, a conditional approval that would be subject to you providing the confirmed order within 60 days of the conditional approval of your project. Just waiting for the next question here. The next question says, will own-rooted vines grown in the nursery be eligible for the ERP as there is no CGCN certification for the nursery? So in this case, this would be, I believe, considered part of the home nursery ineligibility for the program, as vines that are grown in a home nursery are not CGCN verified and would not be eligible in this case. Lindsay or Phil, would you like to elaborate on that
Jump
further?
in. Yeah, so the idea of this is, of course, ensuring that the stock that's going, or people that planting stock that people are using, has been checked for some of the viruses of concern and are following certain protocols to ensure that testing is happening and the plant material is clean. You can reach out to CGCN, or encourage you to go to their website. They do have currently right now a program to help with funding with people getting home nurseries tested for those viruses. So certainly look into that. And they do have ways of certifying. So we're just trying to encourage people back. If you are running a home nursery, or this is something that you're actually building as a business, then I really encourage you to reach out to CGCN.
Thank you. The next question here is fairly technical, so I'll pass this over to Lindsay as well. It says, I have a vineyard block of 1.5 acres of Pinot Gris in Penticton, which was totally destroyed 2 years ago to extreme cold. Is replant of this eligible for Pinot Gris? Um,
Potentially. I feel like this is the classic answer that we love to give as consultants is depends. Um, so in that case, we'd want to know what exactly have you changed in your management practices then to try and help prevent something like this happening again. So um, this is where you'll see a drop-down menu that's now part of the application process. So it'll have some ideas of maybe things to look at. So um, if it's a freeze event you're looking at, maybe are you incorporating hilling up, or you're going to be using some sort of textiles to protect the vines to change in your management practices as to why you feel like it would be more successful this time going back into Pinot Gris. Some of the other climatic things we've seen people do is like maybe they're changing the rootstock they're doing if it was a drought issue or a water issue in that sense. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because a freeze event happened on the variety, but otherwise you feel like you've got a really good site for that variety. Just help us understand what you are changing in your practices to help mitigate that risk potential.
the next question is, so only cost of buying nursery stock is eligible and no labor cost, chemical, or irrigation costs are allowed. And yes, only plant costs are eligible. So those additional labor or chemical or irrigation costs are ineligible under the program. The next question is, can you confirm the maximum acres total for the program per applicant? So there is a funding cap per applicant of 750,000, and there is a project level acreage cap of 20 acres per project, or 15% of your total um, perennial crop acreage, whichever is greater. Um, but across the lifetime of the program or across multiple projects for one applicant, there isn't a acreage cap. So you could have, for example, a 20-acre project in the first year of the program and a 20-acre project in the second year of the program. And it looks like we have one more question coming through. So the question is, I had approval for my project last year. Can I still apply this year? And the answer is that yes, each farm operation is permitted to submit one ERP application per fiscal year or per application intake, regardless of the funding stream. Applicants are eligible to have a project from year one and year two concurrently, so long as they are individual different projects on different locations. And since that is the last question um, that we're able to address right now, we will kind of conclude the Q&A portion of this webinar. And anything else that, if there's any other questions that have come in through that Q&A function, we will address them by email if possible, if an email has been provided. So thank you everyone very much for your participation in this webinar, and yeah, good luck with your applications.